Hello and welcome to the next class. I'm Rob Birdsell, your host, and joined as always by my co-host Tom Burnford. Tom, good to
Good to
see you.
see you, Rob. How are you doing in this busy time as schools are back in, and yet still, I know for me there's a lot of challenges going on with teacher shortages in Catholic schools at this point. So, yeah,
Yep, there are shortages everywhere, it seems. No, it's a beautiful day here in Chicago, 8 inches of fresh snow and 20 degrees, and now we got blue skies. So I'm looking out at a beautiful snowy front yard. I got
that's
to say, this
excellent.
morning when I was sitting watching the snow come down, it was coming 1 to 2 inches an hour. There was this beautiful cardinal in the backyard, and it reminded me, my wife is a kindergarten teacher, and yesterday they had a cardinal come to the bird feeder outside her classroom. And this little girl says to her, Mrs. Birdsell, I've never seen a bird that put that jacket on. She
That's
literally thought
excellent.
the bird just put their clothes on. Today wanted all
That's
red.
excellent. There you go. Putting on the red clothes to stay warm. That's excellent. That's excellent. Well, yeah, it's snowing here too, Rob, and but isn't it amazing how things have changed, that even though it's snowing and snow days, kids are back in school or they're doing school remotely. And for all of us who are home at this time, still working away, still working away. The weather doesn't matter so much now.
Yeah, my one daughter who is still here at home with us was very upset they didn't have a snow day today. She's like, we know how to do remote learning now. Why do we have to go to school?
Exactly,
And I said, I
exactly.
think they want to see you in person.
There you go.
So, Tom, we have a guest today who's a friend of both of ours, Lincoln Snyder. He was appointed last summer as president CEO of the National Catholic Education Association by their board of directors. I met him when he was superintendent of Catholic schools for the Diocese of Sacramento. And prior to that, he was a teacher, school leader, and international distributor for bottle products, a natural fit for heading into a Catholic education career. So, Lincoln, welcome to the next class.
Thanks so much, gentlemen. Great to be here.
And Lincoln, it's great to talk with you as well. I've had the privilege of knowing you for years through our work with NCEA, and we'll never forget visiting schools in the Diocese of Sacramento, particularly touring Paradise with you after the fires, the 2018 Camp Fire, and just in Oroville, seeing how St. Thomas the Apostle took in students from the public school in Paradise that was destroyed, and getting to meet some of the children who were welcomed, having lost everything, were welcomed into a Catholic school, which was an amazing piece of ministry done by you, your teachers, your principals. So we'll never forget that, Lincoln.
That was an incredible day for me too. So the city of Paradise was around 30,000 souls and 11,000 structures. And so, Tom, when you and I drove through the aftermath, that kind of destruction is sort of an abstraction until you see it with your own eyes. I mean, I will never forget the impressions of that day, but
Sure.
I'll
Sure.
also never forget the kindness of the NCEA when we made the ask of schools to help out fellow Catholic school students or fellow students displaced by the campfire. We raised so much money
Yeah.
through NCA's help that the funds are still paying for students to be fully scholarshiped at St. Thomas the Apostle School today.
That's
So,
tremendous. That's
so
tremendous.
the outreach continues to
That's
benefit
great.
kids that were displaced by the campfire.
Good. Good. Well, Lincoln, talking of NCA, how are you enjoying your leadership role there?
Doing great. So this is my 7th month on the job. I
Good.
retired from the superintendency on the 30th of June and started NCEA July 1. It's been very exciting. It's a big country, of course, with around 6,000 Catholic schools, 1.7 million students we get to say this year, thanks to growth and enrollment, 176 dioceses with schools. And so I am having a lot of fun getting to know the membership from coast to coast and everywhere in between, and learning about their needs and learning all about their great schools.
And look, it's such a great story, the growth in enrollment. Tom and I have been seeing it all across the country in small and large schools, and the kids are staying. They obviously came the beginning of the pandemic when our schools were open, Catholic schools were open, and they have stayed. And it's so energizing to see the growth in enrollment and people valuing Catholic schools. One thing, Lincoln, that we talk about a lot here on the next class is the future of education. We've had some great conversations about where education, elementary, secondary, we've had some great post-secondary conversations. As you think to the future future, what is an action? A lot of our listeners are school leaders. What is an action you think a school leader should be doing now to ensure continued growth, continued success in Catholic schools?
I think that the secret sauce of Catholic education that was really proven by the test we withstood is the beauty of our communities. So our data report isn't out yet, but I can offer your listeners the spoilers.
Ooh,
That
absolutely.
we're willing to call it and say that we're anticipating 1.692 million kids in our schools this year, plus minus one last diocese to report. That means 4% growth, over 60,000
Wow.
kids. So
Wow, that's huge.
we've gained more students this year than the single largest diocese in the country in terms of their overall enrollment. So we've added another Los Angeles essentially to the enrollment
Wow,
of the Catholic school. So this is the
That's
first time in
amazing,
24
Lincoln.
years we've seen positive growth, and it has, I think, disrupted that trajectory of maybe our schools being a little bit smaller year on year since 1955. We're up, and the great news within that good news is that our retention rates of all those new friends that we've welcomed to our schools are well over 90% in every diocese reporting. It looks like
wow,
it's going to be somewhere around 93%. Some dioceses are reporting 97 and 98% retention. So in Sacramento, when I was exiting, 98% of the families that had come new to our schools had re-enrolled for the next year. And the data says different things, but I think the general sentiment is that a lot of families came to us because we were open and we were able to offer an in-person education for their child. But once they were in our communities, they stayed because of the community. And so that's a great story to tell. You know, they expected one thing, but are staying because they're getting another. And I think in terms of having a lot of new friends that can help us tell the story of what's great about Catholic education for their children, this is a very unique opportunity for us.
Lincoln,
That's great.
what do you mean by community? When they came because we're open, they're staying because of community. Can you expound on that a bit?
Yeah, so some version of the sentiment, they fell in love with the school or they fell in love with the school community. It is a financial sacrifice for most of our parents to send their child to a Catholic education, but when presented with the opportunity to go back to their previous school, which in most cases was a public school paid for by tax dollars, they liked the school environment enough that they're continuing to invest in a Catholic education for their child. And the number one reason is they just really like the place. They feel it's a great environment for their kid.
That's such great
That's,
news.
and I mean that's tremendous, Lincoln, and we can't wait to see the datas in the annual NCEA data report which comes out. So and I think I'm always struck by the opportunity when a family comes to a Catholic school is to witness that community, is to witness who we are and what we do and what we believe. And if we do that well, people will come and they will stay. And those retention rates demonstrate that we have something there. But Lincoln, so just to sort of flip that around a little bit, in your role as head of the National Catholic Educational Association, what worries you about Catholic education over the next 10 years? I mean, is there, I'm sort of curious. I know what used to keep me up at night, but what keeps you up at night when looking at Catholic schools in the United States these days?
It's that balancing act of serving the people who are within our communities, and then also serving as, so we have to catechize, but we also have to evangelize at the same time, and put that in practical terms. If you look at a big diocese like Los Angeles or say Sacramento even, the number of baptisms in a lot of our dioceses are down on the order of 50% over the last 10 to 15 years. And so we have this bigger societal trend of disaffiliation. In other words, people are less affiliated with organized religion now than they were 30 years ago. And I think that presents a lot of challenges for our ministries. You know, I think the opportunity is Catholic education is a great opportunity to bring in families that maybe aren't observant or not even Catholic, and show them what we're about as a church. So that, I really view as our schools as a real instrument to engage with families that maybe aren't Sunday mass goers every Sunday or not mass goers at all, but to show them what a Catholic community looks like in practice. I mean, it's an opportunity for the church, but we know that we're going to have to look at how we approach the market for Catholic schools differently. We can't count on Father asking the congregation on Sunday to show up at the Catholic school for the open house after Mass and think that we're going to make our numbers. In other words, we're going to have to find ways to engage with families who maybe aren't necessarily observant, to bring them into the school because we've got a great community and an excellent education, and then also be very mindful of that really strong mission role that we play as Catholic institutions to make sure that we're bringing kids closer to Jesus Christ is the ultimate reason that we do what we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this church exists in order to evangelize. Vatican II is very clear on that, and Catholic schools are an integral part of that. So, yeah, thank you. That's good.
So, Lincoln, you've been in this role 6 months now. What has been the biggest surprise for you? You've been in Catholic schools a long time. You've been a leader, a teacher, so you knew what you're getting into, but there has to be something that kind of like, whoa, wasn't expecting that.
It's all politics is local, I think, is a pretty well worn phrase, and I would say that all schools are local. People are very, very. I knew this before, that one of the beauties of the way our church is set up, with everything really distributed to the grassroots, is everybody, when they fall in love with the community, they feel like somehow they're let in on this secret, and they've got the secret sauce, and people just be like us, then everything would be great. And seeing the way that people are invested that level in all of their local communities times 6,000 it has really been just a point of reflection for me. I mean, we've got a lot of people that, yes, they're serving the church and they're there for Catholic schools, but really they're there for that local community because that's what really motivates them. And so really just seeing how local our schools are. I mean, when I look at the strategies that we're going to have to employ to grow as a system and sustain this growth and support our schools with things like good public advocacy, we're not talking about a national strategy. Really, we're talking about a 50-state plan or 176 diocese plan, and really understanding that what we as the association do has to be bottom up and not top down for that reason. It wasn't a surprise, but just wrapping my head around how to go about that approach to it, really trying to be a responsive member association demands a lot of engagement at the local level. And as a ministry of presence is important. Talking to every superintendent in the country one by one right now via Zoom, and just that level of dialogue is, I think, one of the important parts of my job.
Yeah, I remember, Lincoln, when I was running the Cristo Rey network, those schools all are somewhat similar, but they were all so different. Every one of them was its own unique identity. I mean, whether it was the charism of the sponsoring order, the local board that owned it, but I could not agree with you more. The Catholic schools are local. That's it's also why I think they're great.
Indeed.
And I think we saw that during COVID, with just the ability for Catholic schools to adapt in their own way to serve their particular situation and to serve their local communities. So, Lincoln, you mentioned you've been talking with superintendents around the country. Have you been able to get out and visit some schools as well?
I have. I've had a lot of joy in visiting different parts of the country, and I've been to Florida, have been spending time in the Northeast, have looking forward to our big convention in New Orleans coming up in April. And so, of course, been to Dallas as we plan for the 2023 convention. So, I'm getting a real positive sense of all the great things going on as I tackle meetings and visits at all these different regions.
Oh, that's tremendous. Well, talking about the convention, can you tell us, give us a preview of what we can expect in New Orleans? I mean, I know this is going to be one of the first opportunities for many Catholic school leaders to meet in person over the past couple of years. So the people I'm talking to about it are super excited. I'm really looking forward to coming. So, tell us a little bit about it.
Well, we're really looking forward to giving people the New Orleans experience, albeit, somewhat changed because of COVID. So, the city has its restrictions and protocols and things in place like you've seen everywhere. We're really planning for a fun time. Of course, we'll have an opening mass. We're going to have a gospel mass. We have some great keynotes, great speakers, all the sessions that people are used to. It's right downtown on the waterfront next to the French Quarter. So folks will have a chance to check out the city. We're trying to bring vendors to bring in some of the food. We're going to have a lot of the music. We're going to have a soundtrack for the convention. Make sure we're bringing in local musicians to really give it a nice, like I said, a nice soundtrack to keep the party rolling for our Catholic school educators that come to the event.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. That's exciting. And also, I mean, we have Catholic Schools Week coming up as well, right? I mean, for us, that's next week.
Yes, indeed,
So,
and one of our great weeks to shine. I think one of the exciting things is obviously from in recent years we've gone to 2 Catholic Schools Week, Discover Catholic Schools Week in the fall to perhaps introduce schools to families that may not be in a Catholic school now, and then celebrate Catholic Schools Week this coming week to make sure we're acknowledging all the great things going in our communities for the communities. And every school has its own way of doing it. There's a day of giving aligned with it that we're supporting. So we're just looking forward to celebrating that carnival activity. Next week.
excellent.
Great. We're going to take a brief pause, gentlemen, to hear from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. And we're back at the next class. Lincoln, Tom alluded to it earlier, but we're hearing from a lot of schools about challenges with hiring teachers and teacher shortages. I had lunch with a friend last week whose Spanish teacher literally just quit the other day, and now they don't have Spanish at that school. What can you give our listeners, again, school leaders, any ideas or ways to adapt in this challenge? It's not just teachers; it's every industry is facing this right now, but specifically for schools. Do you have ideas or strategies for schools on how to adapt in this challenging labor force?
Indeed, the profile of the Catholic school teacher perhaps has changed a little bit too. We know that all schools, and not just Catholic schools, are drawing from a smaller pool of educators than we've had in the past. A lot of teacher credentialing programs, and it varies state by state. But in California, the number of folks in teacher preparation programs is down by about half. So we know that we're all looking to compete for that next generation of teachers coming in. We are blessed by actually a pretty there's a lot of longevity in the community of Catholic school teachers, which I think has been a bit of a buffer. Of course, we're always worried about burnout and retirements, and we know that during COVID, a lot of folks, have decided to retire or step away from the job. It's been a challenging environment for everyone. But one of the things I've learned in looking at our data is we have way more 20-plus year employees than we think in the Catholic system.
Right.
High percentage of our folks, so we administer a test called the Instrument for Growth, which is a catechetic assessment. And one of the data points in there is the age of the person taking the test. And a preponderance of the people taking the test are 50 plus. Right. So there's both good news and bad news in that. Is that, in the short run, maybe we haven't been as susceptible to that. A lot of people go through teacher preparation, get into teaching, work in the field for a few years, and decide it's not for them and opt out after a few years, right? And so you always have that bump where you have a new class come in, and then there's attrition as we go along the way. That cadre of long-term teachers has helped stabilize Catholic schools a bit. I do think that it does also present a long-term challenge, because when you're looking at a workforce that's, again, a majority are maybe 5, 10, 15 years out from retirement age, it means that we do have to do long-term planning. So, as I think about it from the perspective of a superintendent or as a principal, you want to be looking at things like pay scale right now and understanding who in the community could be the next generation of teacher in the school right now. It's going to take, yes, looking at things like salaries, but also making sure that there's a lot of intentional preparation of that next generation from within the community to make sure you have those bonds. Another special thing about Catholic schools is just how many schools have a high percentage of alum teaching there. And again, that's also been a bit of a stabilizer. I think that one thing we could certainly do better is mining for that next generation of teachers amongst our alumni as they graduate from our high schools, knowing that we want to stay in relationship, hoping that some of them will come back and teach the next generation.
I was actually on this morning with someone from the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, and we were talking about an organization that I actually started at Marquette University High School, called the Alumni Service Corps. And it's where alumni can go back, originally alumni from Marquette High, to teach, spend a year of service, live in community, very nominal wages, but they what it was bringing, Lincoln, is when I was at Marquette High, there were about 15 or 20 scholastics, young Jesuits in formation. I don't think there are any there today. But these young alumni are bringing that energy. On a Sunday night, they're opening up the gym for the students to come out and have an open gym. They're playing guitar at mass. They're bringing that youthful energy that the Scholastics brought, in the 70s and 80s. So that is a way. If schools have not thought about an alumni service corps, certainly reach out. There are tons of them around the country right now, and a great way for schools to bring energy and youth into their faculty.
Well, and in addition, Rob and Lincoln, there are also a significant number of universities that have teacher training programs that include real practical experience and jobs for graduates of the programs that involve living in community. And I mean, the ACE program out of Notre Dame is the largest, but there are a lot of other programs like that, if I'm not mistaken. And the one thing that reminded me, or that they reminded me of, was this sense of how maybe 50 years ago, religious sisters would live in community while teaching in a Catholic school, and therefore were able to integrate their work more fully into their lives, and in some sense help the students better by a deeper level of vocation to teaching. And I think there are so many different options for the way that Catholic school teachers today can live and teach, and particularly for the younger teachers coming into the profession. That idea of those community houses is it makes a lot of sense to me.
Absolutely. And the other bit of Catholic schools that offsets, I think, the fact that we sometimes pay wages that might be a bit below our public school friends in many places is that we have a leadership quotient and also a community quotient that's hard to manage, or hard to manage. That's hard to quantify. Can we start that over? That was a miss. Okay, so yeah. One of the special things about Catholic schools in terms of attracting teachers is the fact that we have a leadership quotient and a community quotient that do give us an advantage over other schools. That people, when they teach in Catholic schools, often love the environment. We hear this time and again that, well, I'm making less money, but I couldn't imagine ever teaching somewhere else. And so
yes,
we know that it's a sacrifice for teachers to do that, but once they're engaged, they tend to stay. The other bit is and you alluded to this, Tom, the leadership programs out there. We're seeing more and more superintendents who and school level leaders who are graduates of programs like the Jesuit Volunteer Corps or the Notre Dame ACE program. In other words, they have come up through a program in which they've been formed in the faith and in the mission of schools and a certain spirituality. They've had community, and they have a lot of really good and creative ideas for reproducing that for their teams once they're in their new jobs as leaders. So we do think that those programs aren't just there to give us young and enthusiastic teachers for a period of time, but it's also the bench for top level leadership for years going forward. And we know that people want to work for great leaders. And so the more that we have these leaders coming out of these excellent programs like ACE or JVC, the more that we're going to see people going to schools and staying there.
And speaking of leadership, so Lincoln, coming back to my introduction of you, you had a bit of a different road into education. You started, if I recall from our conversations, bottle distribution.
Yeah, it's a funny story there. So I went to left Sacramento at 18 and moved to DC, went to the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown, and I'm never coming back to Sacramento. Show me the world. So I wanted to be an ambassador, or be in the Foreign Service rather, and it's a 3-year wait to take the test. And so I went to work for an American company in Poland. So this was the 90s, and the wall had fallen, and Central Europe was being transformed, and it was a really exciting time to be part of that. But yeah, the company I worked for happened to produce beverage packaging, so I could tell you all about cans, bottles, and bottle caps. Ask me anything.
Lincoln, is there anything you learned in that experience that you found useful in your later career in Catholic education?
This is a great question. I learned how to work with a really diverse set of people across cultures. I mean, funny story. One time I was sent to Ajman, which is an emirate in the United Arab Emirates, 2 cities over from Dubai, to bail out a group of engineers that gotten picked up on a DUI. You're not allowed to drink at all in Arab countries. And so the boss said, why don't you just stay for 4 months and do a market survey for another factory while you're there? And
wow.
So I was kind of an accidental tourist of different corners of Europe and Asia because of this job. And I think it gave me a real sensitivity to understanding people, being empathetic, understanding that they might be very different perspectives or to the table. I think that part of the job of Catholic leadership is got a diplomatic quality to it. So one of the things they always taught us in the School of Foreign Service was that authority is the ability to direct the behavior, and power is the ability to influence an outcome. Okay, so when you look at a network like the church, where again it's bottom up, and people think perhaps from the outside in that the Catholic Church is this really rigid corporate hierarchy, but that's not who we are at all. And the truth is, we're more this confederation of franchisees operating under the spiritual umbrella with the bishops and then the Holy Father as our leads. But the truth is, to be effective in Catholic leadership, you really have to make sure that you're exercising power. You're helping people understand why you want to do what you do and help influence those outcomes. It's a very rare day in church work that you get to tell somebody just what they have to do.
Absolutely.
It's such an interesting path. And so then how did you get into Catholic education?
Great question. I was literally called. I walked into my, I had decided that international business and travel was no longer for me when I realized my kids were going to be calling me uncle because I wasn't around very much. And so we moved from Poland back to Sacramento. And I walked into my old high school alma mater front office just to see how the old place was doing. And a former teacher of mine, who at the time was the summer school principal, said, "We just lost our rhetoric teacher. Your mom taught that class. If you can steal her curriculum, I'll hire you on the spot." My mother had been a Catholic school teacher as well. So called mom, stole her curriculum, got a job, and found myself teaching at Christian Brothers High School in Sacramento. So it was, people talk about being called by the Spirit, and the Spirit calls us through people usually, but Spirit wasn't particularly subtle about it that time. It was more like, "Oh, hey, it's you. Here you go." So I was very blessed to literally be handed my first job in Catholic education.
That's a great story.
Thanks,
and a great
Thanks,
school. A great story and a great school, Lincoln. I had the privilege of getting a tour there a couple years ago. It's a beautiful campus and such a strong charism of the Christian Brothers. So, well, as we head to the close here, Lincoln, we ask all of our guests one final question, and that is, who was your favorite teacher and why?
Oh boy, that is a very, very, very tough question for me because I've had some excellent teachers over the years. I would have to go with the person that I most wanted to emulate when I was a teacher myself was a man at Christian Brothers Sacramento named Tom English, who was a 40-plus year teacher at that school. I started off as a freshman and then for history and had him again as a senior for philosophy and logic, and then ended up teaching in the classroom next to him when I was a teacher there, and was just at his retirement party last year after he retired after 40-plus years with the brothers. So no, Tom English was very much the person that I really respected and most wanted to emulate myself when I became a teacher. Tom was just tremendous.
Those are great people. There are a few of them at Market High when I went back and was teaching that I was planning my whole pedagogy and delivery off of them. So I can just picture Tom English. What a great story, Lincoln. Lincoln, thank you for joining us on the next class. It was great to have you here and to see you. To our listeners, if you've enjoyed today's discussion, we hope that you will share this with family and friends and like us on whatever platform you're listening to the next class. Tom, any closing thoughts?
Thank you so much, Lincoln. We look forward to seeing you at the NCEA convention in New Orleans.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I can't wait to welcome you there. And if anybody's interested in attending, they can always check out our website at ncea.org.
Great. Well, thank you all. Thank you for giving us the privilege of your time for listening today. And we hope you all have a good week. And thank you for listening to the next class.